It is Friday, October 16th, 2020, and we are live. Hope everybody's doing well. Well, it's been a very busy week. We made it to the end of the week. It's a lot going on, and it's been a very busy week for me also because we're now on 6 days a week. Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. to 12 midnight Eastern Standard Time. And then still on Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the African History Network show. All right. So on today's show, well, yesterday was you had two presidential town hall forums. Joe Biden was on ABC News and Donald Trump was on NBC and MSNBC. So we're going to do a town hall recap and fact check. Joe Biden got about 2 million more viewers than Donald Trump. I wonder why. Donald Trump's was a very contentious one at sometimes and filled with conspiracy theories and things like this. Is just a debacle. Okay, I watched it on ABC News. I watched Joe Biden on ABC News and recorded it. And then I watched the recap on MSNBC, and I watched some of the clips on MSNBC.com. So earlier today, I was on Roland Martin Unfiltered. I'm a panelist on Fridays now on Roland Martin Unfiltered. And we talked about the presidential town halls from last night. So I'm going to share a clip of Roland Martin Unfiltered dealing with that. We also talked a little bit, talked some more about Ice Cube and his contract with Black America, but we also we talked about Joe Biden's 22-page agenda to empower Black America as well. So on our Sunday night show, we'll share a clip of that. You know, if you listen to me, you know we've been talking about Joe Biden's 22-page to empower Black America going back to May 2020, because it came out about May 4th, 2020, and May through June of 2020. On this show, I took we did 6 Sundays and broke down one of the 6 parts of Joe Biden's plan. So my listeners already know about it. There are a lot of people who just found out this week that the plan exists. But, you know, we dealt with this back in May and June, and we're going back through and looking at it again. We did that for 5 weeks after Joe Biden won accepted the nomination at the Democratic National Convention. So we're going to do part 6 this Sunday. It's just been so busy. We haven't had a chance to do part 6, but we'll do part 6 this Sunday. Okay. And then we also know that October 16th is the 25th anniversary of the Million Man March. Took place October 16th, 1995. 2 million African-American men showed up in Washington, D.C. So we'll talk a little bit about the 25th anniversary of the Million Man March and the role that Black women played. Black women supported Black men. We'll deal with the roles of Black women at the Million Man March. Finalcall.com is a really good, extensive article dealing with this. How's everybody doing? Everybody share this broadcast on your social media platforms and invite your friends to tune in. Also, we're broadcasting on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network. Then also on my personal page, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP. And then on YouTube as well, Michael Imhotep. And then also dealing with history, we'll talk about George Washington Williams. George Washington Williams, the historian, humanitarian, and he was involved in fighting against the slaughter of Africans in the Congo when it came to King Leopold. We'll talk about George Washington Williams. Today is the anniversary of his birth. And he was born in 1849 in Pennsylvania, George Washington Williams. If you saw the movie with the Tarzan movie that came out about 2 or 3 years ago, George Washington, Legend of Tarzan came out in 2016. George Washington Williams was portrayed by Samuel L. Jackson. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about George Washington Williams also, and we'll give you an update on what's going on with coronavirus, because with coronavirus, we see that we have 64,000 new cases of coronavirus in the U.S. for the second day in a row. So we'll give you an update on what's going on with coronavirus. U.S. surpasses 64,000 new coronavirus infections 2 days in a row for first time since July. All right. So follow us on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network. How's everybody doing? Also, if you like this type of information, you can donate to the African History Network, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, then also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show, paypal.me/the AHN Show. So that really helps out, being that we are broadcasting 6 days a week. That helps us to keep doing the research and keep broadcasting, because it's a larger time commitment. All right. So somebody on Facebook, let me see who this is on our Facebook fan page. I think they're on Facebook. Julie said Biden needs to talk more about his plan because a very high percentage of our community never heard about it. Well, there's two things. One, where they're getting their information from. Some of people, I don't know where they're getting the news from. I guess from Facebook memes. I'm not sure. Two, Biden needs to talk about it more, but he talked about it at the town hall last night when he was breaking down to the African-American man. His name was Cedric. And he's talking about home ownership, redlining, money for college, all different types of things like that. That is part of the plan, and it's part of a portion. When you look at the highlights, if you go to joebiden.com, and this is not an endorsement, but if you go to joebiden.com and you look at highlights from Joe Biden's agenda for the Black community, the first thing they talk about is create wealth in the Black community. Okay, if you go look at it, I've gone through, read it 3 times, the full 22-page agenda. Okay, but they have highlights that you can look at as well. They also have highlights of how their policies will impact African-American men, positively impact African-American men as well. So they should talk about this more as actually part of not he talked about policies, but say this is part of my plan to empower Black America. This is part of I'm not crazy about the title Lift Every Voice, but it's better than the Platinum Plan, which is really a fool's gold plan. So they talk about, like last night, Biden talked about the policies that are right here in the agenda, but he should say, this is part of my 22-page agenda to empower Black America. You can go read it at my website, etc. Okay, so he has to brand, they have to brand it better. All right. But see, I have a background in marketing and sales, things like this. I understand it, but they have to brand it better. All right, so we'll deal with all that also. Now, the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. Now, we deal with a number of different topics on the African History Network show. We deal with current events and history, education, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. Sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, K-E-M-E-T, to 22828. Text the word Kemet, K-E-M-E-T, to 22828 to sign up for our email newsletter. Also visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, and sign up for our email newsletter there as well. All right. So I'm posting this article here on the thread of our broadcast, and this deals with May 5th, 2020. BlackPressUSA.com, and BlackPressUSA.com is the website of the National Newspaper Publishers Association. National Newspaper Publishers Association is an association of about 260 Black-owned newspapers. Okay, and they have their own newswire, just like Associated Press, things like that. They have their own newswire. Okay, so they posted, Stacey Brown for Black Press USA wrote an article that deals with Joe Biden's plan to empower Black America, and he goes through and gives a brief overview about it, and then gives some comments about it. So when I talk about the plan, you hear me reference that article. That article is dated May 5th, 2020. Okay, and then at the bottom of the article is a link to the full 22-page agenda. So people should read that and then read Biden's entire policy platform also. Okay, so this information is there. A lot of people don't know it exists and, don't read. So this is why they need to have the graphics. They need to have the graphics to put this in bite sizes and put this out also. The graphics may exist. I haven't seen them. I'm not sure, but I have seen parts of this in various commercials, including commercials online, commercials on Facebook. All right, so let's go to the. I want to go to this clip here. Let's see. Coming up here on the break. Let's go to Mike. Let's go to clip 2. Let's go to clip 2. Highlights from Trump and Biden's dueling town hall events. Biden was on ABC News, and Trump was on NBC. The town hall hosted an NBC by NBC in Miami for Trump and ABC in Philadelphia for Biden were unlikely to attract nearly the audience a debate would. History suggests, and even many Republicans were baffled by Trump's decision to withdraw from the second debate when he's down in the polls and needs every opportunity possible to try to disrupt the racist status quo. Donald Trump did not want another humiliating debate. The first debate was humiliating for him. About 60% of people said Biden won. And then the fact checking came out and showed all the lies that Trump was telling, et cetera. Now, replacing the presidential debate with competing conversations with voters was a fitting symbol of a politically divided and socially distanced America. Instead of speaking to or even shouting at each other, Trump and Biden spoke past each other on different networks, airing at the same time, allowing Americans to choose a favorite candidate to describe reality as they want to see it. Going into the town hall, Biden led Trump by 9.2 percentage points in the NBC News national polling average. Most swing state polls in recent months show Biden to be the favorite. We have clip 2 from NBC News queued up.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's go to that clip.
On the crime bill that you wrote in 1994, which showed prejudice against minorities. Where do you stand today on that?
Well, first of all, things have changed drastically. That crime bill went and voted. The Black Caucus voted for it. Every black mayor supported it across the board. And it didn't, the crime bill itself did not have mandatory sentences except for 2 things. But it had 3 strikes and you're out, which I voted against in the crime bill. But it had a lot of other things in it that turned out to be both bad and good. I wrote the Violence Against Women Act. That was part of it. The assault weapons ban and other things that were good. What I was against was giving states more money for prison systems that they could build, state prison systems.
In the meantime, an awful lot of people were jailed for minor drug crimes after the
Exactly right.
Was it a mistake to support it?
Yes, it was. But here's where the mistake came. The mistake came in terms of what the states did locally.
Now, there was a moment during the Trump town hall where this sister, asked him this question that was quite interesting, if you will, and in what he had to say. Of course, it dealt with this topic. Go to it.
The Democrat, Tyson D. What's your question?
Good evening, Savannah. Good evening, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
As a mother of a young male of color, I have reason to respect authority, not only because it's the right thing to do, but also out of fear that he may face profiling or be considered a criminal. As an educator, I've also had similar conversations with my high school students. Mr. President, what will you and your administration do to better prepare our law enforcement officers to work in collaboration with the communities that they serve, and also to protect the lives of innocent Black and Latinos from police brutality and injustice?
Right. I fully understand the question, and I saw everything that you saw over the summer, and it was a terrible thing to watch. We're very strongly, we have a senator named Tim Scott from South Carolina. He came up with a bill that should have been approved. It was a bill that was strong in terms of law enforcement and strong in terms of enforcing the proper thing and doing the proper thing by law enforcement. And the Democrats just wouldn't go for it. They wouldn't go for it at all. And I don't know why, because it was a really great bill. But I do have to say this. And some people don't like it when I say it, but a lot of people agree. I have done more for the African-American community than any president, with the exception of Abraham Lincoln. Criminal justice reform, prison reform, historically Black colleges and universities. I got them funded. They were on a year-to-year basis. They could have been put out of business. As soon as our country had a little bad year, they would have said, I'm sorry, we're not going to fund you. I got them 10-year funding and financing, and more than they even asked for. I became very friendly with a lot of the heads. But we've done more, and of course, opportunity zones. But criminal justice reform, everybody said it could not be done. President Obama and Biden never even tried to do it. They never even tried. But I say that, and I say it often. I'll say it loud, and I'm very proud of it. And I have a great relationship because of what I've done with the African-American community. I'm very proud of it.
Let's go to our next question. We have Paulette Gale. She leans slightly to Biden. She voted for Clinton in 2016. She's registered as a Republican.
Michael, that's a flat-out lie. That man lied so often that, first of all, he did. The HBCU thing is a lie. Biden and Obama didn't try to do criminal justice reform. It was one of the first bills Obama signed, which lowered the crack cocaine, the powder cocaine disparity. That's a lie. Right. They tried to actually get a broader criminal justice reform bill, but the Republicans would not participate. He's, again, lying about HBCUs. And then, and look, the reality is the last Republican who actually had a real plan for Black America economically was Richard Nixon. That man just lied his ass off again. And so, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, hey, Guthrie, you want to say something?
Oh, well, look, Roland, here's the thing. Yeah, he lied his behind off. I didn't watch it on MSNBC or NBC, but I've got the recap from NBC News. I've got the fact checking from the Washington Post. I watched it on ABC News, okay? I watched Biden on ABC News. Here's the thing, very quickly. Number one, when you talked about 2015, there was bipartisan support in the U.S. Senate for an earlier version of the First Step Act. It was blocked by Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III, U.S. Senator from Alabama, and Senator Tom Cotton, U.S. Senator from Arkansas. They blocked it under President Obama in 2015.
They tried to block the First Step Act this time.
They tried to block the First Step Act this time, but here's the thing. How can Trump claim to be the champion of criminal justice reform, and you nominate two attorney generals who are against criminal justice reform?
Hey, pause it right there, Mike. Pause it right there, Mike. Let's go to commercial break. All right, we'll continue this another side of the break. That's actually me from Roland Martin Unfiltered today, Friday, October 16th. You listen to the African History Network show right here on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation and Future Radio. We'll be back in a few minutes. Stand by, everybody. Stand by. Stand by, everybody. We'll be back in a few minutes. How's everybody doing today? Stand by. We're on commercial break. Calling numbers 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. 313-778-7600. Stand by. We're back from break in a couple of minutes here. All right, email us at customer service at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com if you want to advertise with the African History Network. So we have a special promotion going on right now. You can also post the name of your African American owned business right here on the thread of the broadcast as well. All right, we're the Black business owners tonight. How you doing, Ansar? Ansar, JX, Ronald, Sis Rayleigh, James Willis, Alex. Vernell. Okay, stand by, everybody. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 9:10 a.m. Superstation Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. Hey, it is Friday, October 16th, 2020, and we are live. We're now here 6 days a week. We started Monday, October 12th. And remember, all these shows are archived at our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network on Facebook, our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP. And also on in audio podcast format as well, wherever you get your podcast from, on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Castbox, Stitcher, FM Player. You can visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, and click on Listen to Podcasts, okay? And we have over 1,000 audio podcasts at blogtalkradio.com, blogtalkradio.com. All right, so right before the break, we were listening to an excerpt. I was on Roland Martin Unfiltered, the Friday, October 16th edition, and we were dealing with the presidential town hall meetings and a recap of that. If you could back that clip up maybe about 20 seconds, Mike, and then let's go back to that clip.
Which lowered the crack cocaine, the powder cocaine disparity. That's a lie. Right. They tried to actually get a broader criminal justice reform bill, but the Republicans would not participate. He's, again, lying about HBCUs. And then, and look, the reality is the last Republican who actually had a real plan for Black America economically was Richard Nixon. That man just lied his ass off again. And so, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, hey, Guthrie, you want to say something?
Oh, well, look, Roland, here's the thing. He lied his behind off. I didn't watch it on MSNBC or NBC, but I've got the recap from NBC News. I've got the fact checking from the Washington Post. I watched it on ABC News, okay? I watched Biden on ABC News. Here's the thing, very quickly. Number one, when you talked about 2015, there was bipartisan support in the U.S. Senate for an earlier version of the First Step Act. It was blocked by Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III, U.S. Senator from Alabama, and Senator Tom Cotton, U.S. Senator from Arkansas. They blocked it under President Obama in 2015.
They tried to block the First Step Act this time.
They tried to block the First Step Act this time, but here's the thing. How can Trump claim to be the champion of criminal justice reform and you nominate two attorney generals who are against criminal justice reform? You nominate Attorney General Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III of Alabama, who reversed the Smart on Crime initiative from Attorney General Eric Holder in 2013 that backed off of charging low-level nonviolent drug offenders with the longest, harshest sentences. Okay. Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III tried to back out of the consent decrees with the Baltimore Police Department and the Chicago Police Department that were negotiated by the Obama administration. There were about 25 investigations into the patterns and practices of police departments under the Obama administration, more than any other previous administration, which led to about 14 or 15 consent decrees. Okay, now under Jeff Sessions and Attorney General William Barr, they have taken a hands-off approach to policing. This is what people have to understand. They've taken a hands-off approach to policing and basically stopped doing the investigations into the police department. So when you go across the board, where you see them reversing the policies from the Obama administration, okay? But a lot of people don't know that these policies were in place under the Obama administration. And then the other thing is when we look at Donald Trump saying that he's done more for African Americans since Lincoln. Look at the fact checking from the Washington Post. Once again, that's a lie. Okay, Washington Post has fact checking on this, fact checking the dueling town halls of Trump and Biden. So this is an example of how elections have consequences. And when he talked about HBCUs, not only was that Representative Alma Adams' bill, but as Dr. William Kimbrough explained when you interviewed,
he program that was put in place by George W. Bush, expanded by Obama. So,
but there was a veto-proof majority to override a veto. So even if he vetoed the bill, it was still going to become.
But the bottom line is, it wasn't his bill. Mustafa, he's a liar. He's a liar. Pure and simple.
Right.
He's a liar.
Okay. Pause it right there, Mike. Pause it right there, Mike.
Watching the two town halls, the difference between slogans and actually somebody who has a conversation around policy, so that you can evaluate if you want to get behind.
Hey, pause it right there, Mike.
When Trump talks.
Okay. I was on with Mustafa Santiago Ali in that segment. So we'll play some more of that on my Sunday night show because we have more time on the Sunday night show. So check that out. And Roland re-airs these the shows throughout the day. Follow Roland on Roland Martin on Facebook. And I think it's Roland S. Martin on YouTube. All right. Now, I want to go to, we have another clip here. This is from NBC News. That's clip 1. So I'm going to go to that in just a minute here, Mike. It's a recap of the two debates. But let's look at some of the recap from NBC News. Okay. This is 5 takeaways from Trump's and Biden's dueling town halls. We'll come to that in just a second. But I want to go to these other 2 articles here. This deals with how Trump has dismantled the police reform that took place under the Obama administration. NewYorkMag.com, NYMag.com. Trump's plan to end Obama's peaceful reforms and unshackle the police succeeded. Trump's plan to end Obama's peaceful reforms and unshackle the police succeeded. Okay, this is from I think this is June 20. Let's see. May. This is from May 2020. This is after George Floyd was. Let me see. This is after I think it's after George Floyd was killed. George Floyd was killed May 25th, 2020. So it talks about Lieutenant Bob Kroll, Kroll. You've heard me talk about this in the past couple of weeks. Lieutenant Bob Kroll is the president of the Minneapolis Police Union. So Minneapolis is where George Floyd was killed. So last October, in October 2019, Minneapolis Police Union President Bob Kroll appeared at a Donald Trump rally, clad in his red Cops for Trump t-shirt. Lieutenant Bob Kroll gloated that the president had unshackled his officers from the restraints imposed by Trump's predecessor, Barack Obama. Quote, he said the Obama administration and the handcuffing and oppression of police was despicable, end quote, he told the crowd at the rally. Quote, the first thing President Trump did when he took office was turn that around, got rid of the Holder Loretta Lynch regime, Attorney General Eric Holder, Attorney General Loretta Lynch, and decided to start taking letting the cops do their job, put the handcuffs on the criminals instead of us, end quote. We will never know if that unshackling emboldened Officer Derek Chauvin to murder George Floyd. But the line between the relief demanded by Lieutenant Bob Crawl, president of the Minneapolis Police Union, on behalf of Minneapolis police and the naked assassination committed on camera by one of his officers is quite direct. The world around us, in which the streets of every major American city are filled with protesters, is the result of Trump granting the wishes of the most retrograde police officers. Okay, they're not saying all officers, they're talking about the bad ones. They are getting what they asked for. The last few years of the Obama administration were one of the most productive periods of criminal justice reform in American history. Now, the majority of the power over policing is not at the federal level, it's at the state and local level because of the 10th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, which gives states rights. The Obama administration changed sentencing guidelines to reduce the disparity in the treatment of drug crimes that had disproportionately harmed Black defendants. As part of an effort to inculcate a, quote, guardian, not warrior mindset, it restricted the transfer of surplus military equipment to police departments, because coming out of the protests in Ferguson, Missouri, surrounding the killing of Mike Brown, President Obama stopped sending the surplus military equipment to the police departments. This was one of the things they were asking for. Trump reversed that. Trump said, we want the police departments to have the surplus military equipment. Most importantly, it formed consent decrees with more than a dozen police departments to force them to change their practices. These reforms did not root out police brutality and racism. They were mild both in form and intent, undertaken with the goal of conciliating police and their communities, believing that enhancing trust would ultimately create safer conditions for police as well as those who fear them. It was the epitome of evolutionary cultural change. This was the context of Trump's nightmarish claims in 2016 that cities were being overtaken by bloodshed and carnage, like he's saying now. He ran on Law and Order in 2016. He's running on Law and Order now. Law and Order is a throwback to Richard Nixon, 1968, as a backlash to the Black Power movement, the Civil Rights movement, affirmative action, a backlash to the rebellions that were taking place across the country as well, like in July 1967, right here in Detroit. Richard Nixon was the backlash to all of that. So this was the context of Trump's nightmarish claims in 2016 that cities were being overtaken by bloodshed and carnage. Whatever wisps of data he could cite to support his wild rhetoric, Trump was drawing a picture borrowed from the imaginations of resentful police who experienced President Obama's carefully drawn nudges as intolerable oppression. Trump reversed them swiftly. Trump's first Attorney General, Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III, ended the restriction on transferring military equipment to police, reviewed all consent decrees struck by his predecessors, and then restricted their use going forward. Jeff Sessions said we need to take a hands-off approach. We need to back up, take a hands-off approach to police. Quote, it is not the responsibility of the federal government to manage non-federal law enforcement agencies, end quote. Attorney General Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III said. Now, when Attorney General William Barr took over from Sessions, there was nothing left of the Obama reforms to undo. Still, Attorney General William Barr continued to rail against the specter of criminal justice reform. Barr presented the reform movement, now confined to local officials, as a civilizational threat. Quote, there is another development that is demoralizing to law enforcement and dangerous to public safety. He railed in late August 2019. Quote, that is the emergence in some of our large cities of district attorneys that style themselves as quote unquote social justice reformers. Like Baltimore State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby, Kim Fox in Chicago, Kim Gardner in St. Louis, the progressive DAs that African Americans voted and put in office to be the correct type of prosecutors. They are at odds. They're being attacked by the Attorney General. Because once again, Donald Trump and Attorney General William Barr and Jeff Sessions are really against criminal justice reform. Okay, that is the emergence in some of our large cities of district attorneys that style themselves as social justice reformers who spend their time undercutting the police, letting criminals off the hook, and refusing to enforce the law. End quote. This is Attorney General William Barr saying this. Okay, who is a henchman for Donald Trump and interfering with the prosecution of some of Trump's cronies. Okay, but he's talking about district attorneys letting criminals off the hook. Read the rest of this article. This is from NewYorkMag.com. Trump's plan to end Obama's peaceful reforms and unshackle the police. Because see, back in 2018, go back to 2016 when Trump ran, you had police unions, many police unions and police officers across the country saying that the Obama administration and Black Lives Matter were declaring a war on police. And many of them supported Trump because Trump supported them. Trump also supports privatized prisons. This is why Core Civic and Geo Group, two of the largest owner-operators of privatized prisons, donated almost $600,000 to his 2016 presidential campaign. Because in August of 2016, the Obama administration announced that they were not going to renew federal contracts at privatized prisons. Go research this. The day that information came out, the stock prices of Core Civic and Geo Group took a big hit. They were already losing money under the Obama administration because the U.S. prison population dropped to its lowest point in 20 years in December 2015. It dropped to 1.53 million. Newsweek.com has an article on this. They have a link to the December 2016 report from the Department of Justice. So I read the article and I read the report from the Department of Justice as well. People don't know. See, the prison population, the U.S. prison population dropped to its lowest point in 20 years under President Obama, and the percentage of African Americans in prison dropped from 40% to 34%. Elections have consequences. All right, so then also read this article: Anger as local police union chief calls George Floyd a violent criminal. June 1st, 2020, TheGuardian.com. Anger as local police union chief calls George Floyd a violent criminal. Okay, this is once again Lieutenant Bob Crawl of the Police Officers Federation of Minneapolis. He's calling George Floyd a violent criminal. He also is a Trump supporter. Read that article as well. All right. And then for good measure, this one here deals with the power of police unions and how the culture of police unions has to change. June 6, 2020, New York Times, how police unions became such powerful opponents to reform efforts. How police unions became such powerful opponents to reform efforts. New York Times, June 6, 2020. Half a decade after a spate of officer-involved deaths inspired widespread protests, many police unions are digging in to defend members. All right, so check out those articles. Now, let's look at some of this fact checking right quick. So we saw Donald Trump acting like he didn't know much about QAnon. At the first debate, Trump claimed that he didn't know much about the Proud Boys, a violent far-right extremist group, but he told them to, quote unquote, stand back and stand by, and a move they heard as an endorsement. In his NBC town hall on Thursday, October 15th, Donald Trump claimed that he didn't know much about QAnon, the groundless conspiracy theory that claims that elites run a vast, just crazy nonsense, satanic cult, just nonsense. But Trump said something they are sure to hear as an endorsement. He said, "I know nothing about QAnon. I do know they're very much against pedophilia, and I agree with that." The QAnon supports Trump. He doesn't attack people that support him. That's what that's about. Now, an FBI field office recently warned that, quote, fringe political conspiracy theories like QAnon, quote, very likely motivate some domestic extremists, end quote, very likely motivate some domestic extremists. Trump also bristled when Savannah Guthrie, the moderator, the host and the moderator of NBC News, asked him to clearly and forcefully condemn white supremacists. But the reason he keeps getting the question is that he seems so uncomfortable answering what would be a layup for any other politician, including his own vice president. So he said, I denounce white supremacy. What's your next question? Okay, let's go to this clip from NBC News. Let's get a recap of what took place between the two town halls.
Where do you stand today on that?
Well, first of all, things have changed drastically. That crime bill went and voted. The Black Caucus voted for it. Every black mayor supported it across the board. And the crime bill itself did not have mandatory sentences except for two things. But it had 3 strikes and you're out, which I voted against in the crime bill. But it had a lot of other things in it that turned out to be both bad and good. I wrote the Violence Against Women Act. That was part of it. The assault weapons ban and other things that were good. What I was against was giving states more money for prison systems that they could build, state prison systems.
In the meantime, an awful lot of people were jailed for minor drug crimes after the
Exactly right.
Was it a mistake to support it?
Yes, it was. But here's where the mistake came. The mistake came in terms of what the states did locally.
Now, there was a moment during the Trump Townhall
Hey,
where,
Mike, go to the NBC News clip. That's the same clip from YouTube. Go to the NBC News clip. It says NBC. I think this clip is either clip 1 or clip 2. The 2 clips in the email I sent you.
Okay, I'm getting it together for you right now.
All right, thanks. Okay, so we'll go to that clip here in just a minute. This clip is a recap of what took place last night. Now, Biden talked about court packing also. We saw 2 different vastly tones from the candidates as well. Trump made a claim about 85% of people who wear masks catch coronavirus. He said just the other day, just let me know when we have the clip ready. Just the other day, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention came out with a statement that 85% of people who wear masks catch it. Savannah Guthrie said they didn't say that. I know that study. Trump said that's what I heard and that's what I saw. So Trump falsely described a study published by the CDC on September 11th and then ignored Savannah Guthrie, the NBC moderator, when she tried to correct him. Published in the CDC's morbidity and mortality, the morbidity and mortality weekly report, the study compared 154 people who tested positive for coronavirus with 160 people who tested negative. Okay, it tested 154 people who tested positive for coronavirus with 160 people who tested negative. The top finding was that close contact with a person with known COVID-19 was more commonly reported among the positive cases, 42%, than negative cases, 14%. Okay, let me repeat that. The top finding was that, quote, close contact with a person with known COVID-19, meaning COVID-19 positive, was more commonly reported among, end quote, the positive cases, 42%, than the negative cases, 14%. Coronavirus positive patients were more likely to have a reported dining at a restaurant, any area designated by the restaurant, including indoor, patio, and outdoor seating. Quote, in the 2 weeks preceding illness onset, end quote, than those who tested negative, the study says. Okay, so he just totally got the study wrong. He just said 85% of people wear masks get coronavirus.
Well, Michael, I got you queued up here for you.
Okay, all right. So let's go to this clip here. This is a recap of the two town halls.
Did you take a test on the day of the debate, I guess, is the bottom line?
I probably did, and I took a test the day before and the day before, and I was always in great shape, and I was in great shape for the debate. As president, I can't be locked in a room someplace for the next year and just stay and do nothing. And every time I go into a crowd, I was with the parents of our fallen heroes. These people are the most incredible people. And they came up to me, and they would hug me, and they would touch me. And I'm not going to not let them do it. When a president doesn't wear a mask or makes fun of folks like me when I was wearing a mask for a long time, then people say, well, it mustn't be that important.
After contracting COVID-19 yourself, has your opinion changed on the importance of mask wearing?
No, because I was okay with the masks. I was good with it, but I've heard many different stories on masks. If you listen to the head of the CDC, he stood up and he said, while we're waiting for a vaccine, he held up a mask. You wear this mask, you'll save more lives between now and the end of the year than if we had a vaccine. I knew it was a big threat. At the same time, I don't want to panic this country. I don't want to go out and say, everybody's going to die. Everybody's going to...
Is there a middle ground? You don't have to mislead, but you can...
No, there's not a middle ground. You have to be safe, you have to be vigilant, and you have to be smart.
Besides, you ain't black. What do you have to say to young black voters who see voting for you as further participation in a system that continually fails to protect them?
Well, I say, first of all, as my buddy John Lewis said, it's a sacred opportunity and right to vote. You can make a difference. If young black women and men vote, you can determine the outcome of this election. It's not a joke. You can do that.
Mr. President, what will you and your administration do to better prepare our law enforcement officers to work in collaboration with the communities that they serve and also to protect the lives of innocent Black and Latinos from police brutality and injustice?
Right. I fully understand the question, and I saw everything that you saw over the summer, and it was a terrible thing to watch. And some people don't like it when I say it, but a lot of people agree. I have done more for the African-American community than any president, with the exception of Abraham Lincoln.
You said you don't want to ban fracking. As you know, it's an important issue here in Pennsylvania. Not everyone buys your denial. A member of the Boilermakers Local 154, Sean, quoted in the New York Times today saying, you can't have it both ways. He says you can't meet your goal to end fossil fuels without ending fracking. What do you say to people like Sean who doubt your denial because they think you want to keep that promise?
Tell the Boilermakers overwhelming endorsement, okay? What I would do is I would stop giving tax breaks and subsidizing oil. We don't need to subsidize oil any longer, number one. We should stop that and save billions of dollars over time. What I would also do with regard to, the difference between me and the new Green Deal, they say automatically by 2030, we're going to be carbon free. Not possible.
So are you for it or against it? You say you're not for it, but in your website it says you call it a crucial framework.
My deal is a crucial framework. I'm sure they'll ask you the white supremacy question. I denounce white supremacy. And frankly, you want to know something? I denounce Antifa, and I denounce these people on the left that are burning down our cities that are run by Democrats who don't
All right,
know what
while we're
doing.
denouncing, let me ask you about QAnon.
I just don't know about QAnon.
You do know.
I don't know. No, I don't know. What I do hear about it is they are very strongly against pedophilia, and I agree with that. I mean, I do agree with that, and I agree with
There's not a satanic pedophile.
I have no idea. I know
you don't know that? Okay.
No, I don't know
that.
Neither do you know that.
Just this week, you retweeted to your 87 million followers a conspiracy theory that Joe Biden orchestrated to have SEAL Team 6, the Navy SEAL Team 6, killed to cover up the fake death of bin Laden. Now, why would you send a lie like that to your followers? You retweeted.
That was a retweet. That was an opinion of somebody, and that was a retweet. I'll put it out there. People can decide for themselves.
You're the president. You're not like someone's crazy uncle. Your own FBI director says
he is somebody's crazy uncle. He is somebody's crazy uncle. Go ahead, play the rest of it.
And unify bring people together. When I said I was running because I wanted to unify the country, people said, well, they were the old days. The and we better be able to do it again. We better be able to do it again.
Mr. Vice President, if you lose, what will that say to you about where America is today?
Well, it could say I'm a lousy candidate and I didn't do a good job. But I think, I hope that it doesn't say that we are as racially, ethnically, and religiously at odds with one another as it appears.
Go to our next question. We have Paulette Dale. She leans slightly to Biden. She voted for Clinton in 2016. She's registered as a Republican. Paulette, what's your question?
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
I have to say, you have a great smile.
Thank you.
So, he does. You're so handsome when you smile. As the daughter of immigrants to the United States who fled Eastern Europe due to religious persecution,
right.
The United States immigration policies are very personal for me.
Right.
Surveys show that most Americans and the majority of Republicans support the Dreamers program. So my question for you, Mr. President, is if you are elected to a second term, do you expect to pursue your previous efforts to cut the DACA program?
Yeah.
Why or why not?
And the DACA is somewhat different than Dreamers. You understand that, and you understand it better than anybody probably in this room. Where do you come from, by the way, originally?
My grandparents were from Russia and Poland.
That's very good. Okay. So we are going to take care of DACA. We're going to take care of Dreamer. It's working right now. We're negotiating different aspects of immigration and immigration law. We built now over 400 miles of border wall, southern border. Mexico's working very closely with us. We have the strongest border we've ever had. We want people to come into our country. They have to come in legally. But we are working very hard on the DACA program, and you will be, I think, very happy over the course of the next year.
Thank you.
Because I feel the same way as you do about it.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
Mr. President, in point of fact, the DACA program, there are, under your administration, no new applicants are allowed. And in fact, the DACA recipients now have to renew every year as opposed to every 2 years. So in fact, the DACA program has been curtailed by your administration.
Well, what happened is because of the pandemic, much changed on the immigration front. Mexico is heavily infected, as you know, and we've made it very, very difficult to come in because of the pandemic and other reasons, and crime. But we have a very strong border right now, and we have to keep it that way. But we want people to come into our country, but they have to come in through a merit system, and they have to come in legally. And people are very, very happy with it. You haven't heard any complaints about that. But what happened is because of the pandemic, we have to be extra cautious.
All right. So let's pause it there. We'll do more fact checking on our Sunday night show because we have 2 hours there. We're almost out of time here. We're going to continue a few more minutes on my social media platforms: The African History Network on Facebook, The African History Network on Facebook, and Michael Imhotep on YouTube. We'll continue a few more minutes after the top of the hour. Let's look at NBCnews.com 5 takeaways from Trump and Biden's dueling town halls. Biden acknowledges mistakes of 1994 crime bill. Now, this is not the first time he's done it. He did this back in 2016 also, but a lot of people don't follow this. But he did in 2016. He said the crime bill went too far, 94 crime bill. The crime bill is complicated. People really need to study it and understand the difference between federal law and state law. But Biden said parts of the 94 bill that he helped write were bad, referring to a measure linked to the rise of mass incarceration. However, people want to define it, because mass incarceration was already on the rise. The U.S. prison population quadruples from 1970 to 1993. It goes from 300,000 in 1970 to 1.3 million in 1993. And you can go to BJS.gov, Bureau of Justice Statistics, BJS.gov, Bureau of Justice Statistics, okay, and check out the prison population. All right, now, So he said he elaborated by saying things have changed drastically since 94, and he noted that many black leaders at the time supported it. He said that the goal of the bill was same time for same crime, same time for same crime, and that the core of the mistake was in what the states did locally. Okay, now 23 members of the Congressional Black Caucus voted for it. 11 members voted against it. I've talked about the crime bill in depth in the past because I've studied it and studied Richard Nixon's war on drugs, that because the war on drugs starts with Richard Nixon's June 17th, 1971. Violent crime peaked in 1992. Go to Bureau of Justice Statistics and look at the rise in violent crime. It peaked in 1992. People all across the country were asking for something to be done about crime. Right here in Detroit, African Americans right here in Detroit, people were saying there need to be more police on the streets. They wanted something done about the crime. He did not write all of the parts of it. So when you talked about 3 strikes and you're out, that was a part that he did not write and voted against. Different parts of the bill were voted on. It wasn't just the bill, the entire bill was voted. Different parts of the bill were voted on also. Let's see. He said that the goal of the bill was same time, same crime. He said, asked whether it was a mistake. He said it was. Now, his campaign said Biden was referring to a different bill from 1986 with that response. Okay. We'll continue this on our social media platforms. We'll continue this on our Sunday night show, also 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the African History Network show. All right. Thanks for tuning in. At the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. Because right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you on Sunday. Peace. All right, stand by, everybody. Stand by. Let me disconnect this call. We'll be here for a few more minutes. Okay, I'm not doing 2 hours, but we'll be here for a few more minutes. All right, how's everybody doing? All right, if you like this type of information, also, you can donate to the African History Network, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App. All right, let's continue. I'll post these links here also for these articles. So moments earlier, Biden was asked by a young black man why his demographics should feel motivated enough to vote. We played that clip also. You heard that. And Biden cited numerous policy proposals, such as making the criminal justice system more fair, boosting funding for historically black colleges and universities, helping African Americans accumulate wealth by guaranteeing first-time home buyers a $15,000 down payment, etc. That's all part of Biden's plan. And if you go to joebiden.com, you can read it in its entirety, but you can also read highlights. You can look at highlights from Joe Biden's agenda for the black community. You could read that first part. It talks about create wealth in the black community. It talks about protect and build on Obamacare, invest in our students and educators, support education beyond high school, invest in clean air, energy revolution, and environmental justice, make a transformational investment in our country's infrastructure, strengthen the right to vote, strengthen America's commitment to justice, end violence against women. So you could read that. It goes through and explains each one of these. Okay, just as highlights are more extensive than Donald Trump's 2-page platinum plan, which is really a fool's gold plan. Okay, so you could read that, and then you could read it in its entirety. On our Sunday night show, we'll deal with part 6, because we go through and break down the entire plan. So this is the full plan. I have it printed up. You know, we've been going through breaking this down. Previous weeks, we skipped a couple weeks, but previous weeks we did with 5 parts of this. Part 6 we'll have time to do part 6 Sunday. Now, keep in mind, we went through part 1 through 6, May through June of this year also. So a lot of people just find out about this. Then they also have a fact sheet at joebiden.com that gives a synopsis of how his policies will positively impact African American men, expanding access to affordable health care, creating jobs for black men, providing startup capital for small business, reforming criminal justice, making college affordable, increasing black home ownership. Hold on, that was Let me see. That was okay. Then they go through and break it and explain it further. They give an overview and explain it further. Helping Black men create opportunity and wealth. Biden Harris will provide the Minority Business Development Agency with $5 billion in annual lending and investment authority to ensure capital. What is this? It cut off. Ensure capital something. Capital investment. Expanding, create, increase home ownership. $5 billion in annual lending and investment authority to ensure capital flows directly to minority-owned businesses and investments in critical infrastructure, including in Black communities. Right now, the federal government gives away about $25 billion in loans, of which Black-owned businesses only get about $750 million. One of the things is a lot of our businesses don't know the money's available. One, two, their paperwork's not in order, so they can't qualify for a lot of the loans. Your paperwork has to be in order. Your tax returns, things like this. A lot of them can't meet the requirements because their paperwork's not in order. Okay, so more of us have to apply to get the money, but the paperwork has to be in order. Okay, so a lot of people don't know this. Create millions of good paying jobs for all Americans, including to revive American manufacturing and build on nation's clean energy future and modern sustainable infrastructure. Biden Harris will ensure Black men are represented in those millions of jobs, increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour, which would give nearly 40% of Black workers a pay raise. In Donald Trump and Republicans' war on labor and make it easier for workers to unionize and collectively bargain. Black union members earn nearly 14% more and are 9 times wealthier than their non-union counterparts and are more likely to have employer-provided benefits like healthcare and retirement. Okay, then they go on to help Black men buy a home by addressing racial disparities in home ownership and creating a $15,000 tax credit for buyers to purchase their first home, a key to building wealth. Right now, approximately 74% of white families own their own homes compared to 44% of Black families. Okay. Biden's plan will tackle redlining and other discrimination in housing and create a $15 down payment tax credit for first-time home buyers. It goes on from that. You can read it. This is just the overview. These are the highlights. So they have it broken down like that also. These are the highlights. Okay. So read this. Now this stuff been out since May 2020. A lot of people don't know this. All right, so check that out as well. We'll do one more fact check and then we'll do the rest of this on our Sunday night show. Let me see. There was one other. I want to do this one here. Donald Trump said, "I've done more for the Black community than any other president since Lincoln." He loves to say this. Okay, it's not true, but he loves to say this. So Donald Trump cited record funding for historically Black colleges and universities. You heard the segment with Roland Martin and myself. That wasn't his bill, and it was a veto-proof majority in the House and the Senate. So even if he vetoed the bill, they had the votes to override his veto. The president cited record funding for historically Black colleges and universities, HBCUs, a bill he signed to overhaul prison sentences and what he claimed are increased investments in minority communities through opportunity zones. These are largely gentrified areas. Okay, so who's getting the real benefits? Opportunity zone legislation that claim by itself is suspect. And they have a reference here to the New York Times article, how a Trump tax break to help poor communities became a windfall for the rich. This is largely going to gentrified areas. Okay, this is largely going to gentrified areas. So let me see. And we got some dumbass trolls, so we'll block the trolls. Historians said Lyndon Johnson, who signed into law the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, is clearly the president who had the most lasting impact on the lives of African Americans through hard fought legislative victories. He also signed Executive Order 11246, also known as affirmative action. Okay. And then he signed Medicare and Medicaid in the law also. Quote, when LBJ signed his landmark Medicare Act in 1965, he secured desegregation of hospitals throughout the South, which had been universal and anywhere else it existed. Anywhere else it existed. There was an enormous accomplishment. That was an enormous accomplishment, said Max J. Skidmore, a presidential historian at the University of Missouri. Quote, presidents who have done the most for Black civil rights since Lincoln would include Ulysses S. Grant, securing creation of Department of Justice and empowering the Attorney General to prosecute the Ku Klux Klan and racial violence. So that'd be like the four force acts of like the 1870s, like the Anti-Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871. Harry Truman desegregated the military using executive order to circumvent a Congress dominated by the South. Barack Obama should be included for his success in passing the Affordable Care Act, which is one of the greatest anti-poverty measures that this country has ever enacted. That's presidential historian at the University of Missouri, Max J. Skidmore. Now, many experts faulted Trump for his attacks on voting rights, which mainly benefit non-white people, so-called minorities, and his record of racial statements. African-American unemployment and poverty rates had been declining for years before Trump took office, and HBCU funding was mostly handled by Congress. And the unemployment rate for African Americans dropped down to 7.8%. It was cut in half under President Obama. It dropped down to 7.8%. So in December 2016. So Trump inherited a largely healthy economy. It wasn't perfect. It was a largely healthy economy. And he's largely destroyed it. We saw second quarter of this year, gross domestic product dropped 32.9%. We see, even though some people have been called back to work, we see 25 million people still unemployed. The jobless claims came out Thursday. 898,000 people filed for unemployment. So we'll do more fact checking on our Sunday night show. Okay, check out the fact checking from Washington Post, fact checking the dueling town halls of Trump and Biden, and also you can look at it from NBCnews.com as well. They have fact checking there as well at NBC News. Let's look quickly here at the 25th anniversary of the Million Man March. 25th anniversary of the Million Man March. Finalcall.com has a really good article. Black women supported Black men, the roles of women at the Million Man March. Black women supported Black men, the roles of women at the Million Man March. And this is written by Anissa Muhammad, a contributing writer. So almost 2 million men attended the Million Man March at the call of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan 25 years ago on October 16, 1995. But behind the scenes and out in front, women worked, organized, supported, spoke, and women were impacted. One of the earliest supporters of the Million Man March among Black women leaders was Dr. E. Faye Williams, the letter E, F-A-Y-E, E. Faye Williams, who today serves as president of the National Congress of Black Women. She was in charge of the weekly organizing meeting and was co-convener of the Washington, D.C. Local Organizing Committee and co-chair of the march. She said, quote, there were some people who were concerned that it was biased against women to say they were having a Million Man March. Of course, I did not feel that way. I felt that it was a really good time for brothers to get together and to be more positive, to strengthen themselves and to be better men. So it was not a problem for me from the beginning. And it did not matter to me some of the negative things that people were saying because women were not invited, end quote, she said. Quote, it's just that we were not openly invited, but we were not told that we could not show up. And that was one of the first things I said to Minister Farrakhan when he came to town to talk about what the march would be like, she continued. She said, quote, I raised my hand and I said, Minister, I love you, I respect you, but I just can't see having 1 million black men coming to town and I'm going to stay home because I don't have a husband or children to stay home with. He kind of chuckled, and soon thereafter, I was asked to be one of the co-chairs of the march. Now, Ruth Muhammad also attended many of the early organizing meetings for the Million Man March. She was a photographer, great helper, planner, and organizer for the Nation of Islam's Mosque number 4 in Washington, D.C. Ruth Muhammad said, I was able to attend one of the first national planning sessions convened by Minister Farrakhan at the Kennedy Street fraternity. It's the Phi Beta Sigma fraternity house headquarters that became the headquarters of the Million Man March. That's my fraternity, Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. And some of those in attendance at the meeting were Cora Masters Berry, the wife of Mayor at the time, Mayor Marion Berry of Washington, D.C., Reverend James Bevel, Reverend Al Sharpton, as well as national officials of the Nation of Islam, she said. Now, Ruth Muhammad attended meetings with the National Park Service, which provided park parameters and guidelines to follow. She also assisted Dr. Aleem Muhammad with the health task force for the march, attended meetings held by Dr. Dorothy Height, who was president of the National Council of Negro Women, and attended planning sessions at Union Temple Baptist Church under the leadership of Reverend Willie Wilson and Reverend Mary Wilson, and meetings at the Imani Temple African American Catholic Congregation under the leadership of Archbishop George Augustus Stallings, who had previously broken away from the Catholic Church for what he charged was its failure to serve the needs of the Black community. Outside of the meetings and planning sessions, Ruth Muhammad also assisted Mother Tainetta Muhammad, wife of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, patriarch of the Nation of Islam. Mother Tainetta Muhammad convened a team of sisters to produce a book, Women in Support of the Million Man March. Women in Support of the Million Man March. Ruth Muhammad brought up a section in the book which addressed the questions. What is the role of the woman? What are some ways that we can help? When the march started out, there was a thought that it was a march for Black men to bring them together. Minister Farrakhan had crisscrossed the country conducting men's only meetings to encourage them to stand up as husbands, fathers, and responsible protectors of their families and communities. Quote, the march was one of the culminations of all of these meetings, but the sisters, the women, wanted to know, okay, that is great, but what is our role? What can we do? Because these are our brothers, these are our fathers, our sons, and we're affected by whatever affects them, end quote, she said. Sister Ruth Muhammad went on to say, I remember there was a time when attorney Ife Williams asked about that. What can women do? So Minister Farrakhan said, you can support. There's a way for you to support the men without being a part. We're not saying the Million Man March is not for women. We're saying we as men, there's a unity that we need to forge first. So he gave us different ideas of what women can do, end quote, Ruth Muhammad reflected. Women did much of the planning and organization for the march, including registering people to attend and raising money for donations. Black women used their voices on radio and television to help promote the Million Man March. Radio talk show host Bev Smith, who I met when I was broadcasting on the Empowerment Radio Network, which was headquartered in Atlanta. I was broadcasting from here in Detroit to the network in Atlanta. Radio talk show host Bev Smith was one of the women who promoted the march. She hosted both a radio show called The Bev Smith Show and the popular show on BET called Our Voices back in the 90s. At the time, BET was black owned by Bob Johnson. Quote, women pretty much agreed to let the men come out front. This is what I talked about on my show, that we needed our black men to show up, Bev Smith said. She said she felt that was her role because of the way white media outlets portrayed the march and how they predicted it was going to be violent. And I remember watching it after the day out from work. I remember watching it on CNN all day. Watched it all day on CNN. Quote, I made my radio show, The Voice of the Million Man March. The minister gave me permission to do that, and that's what I did. Either radio show or TV show, I'm not sure which one. Quote, and then I did public service announcements on my own and recorded them, trying to get black men to pool their resources and get buses and stuff like that, because it was something to see. It was something to see. I'll never forget it, to see all these men. And I'm absolutely convinced it was more than a million. It was more than a million men. They have to cut it. It was more than a million men. There were men everywhere. And what I also loved about it is that the women gave the men faith, Bev Smith said. Now, on the day of the Million Man March, women in the Nation of Islam helped make sure the march was secure. Those who were not doing security stayed home. Quote, it was a day of absence from your jobs as well, because the march was on a Monday, and that was historic in and of itself, end quote, Ruth Muhammad said. So by not being present in the world, but being home and being a supporter was very radical for that time, for people to say, no, I'm just going to be supportive. I'm going to stay home. Now, the march was a surreal moment for black women. Many went out of curiosity and to be a witness of so many black men gathered together. Okay, so you can check out the rest of this at finalcall.com. It's an article entitled Black Women Supported Black Men, the Roles of Black Women at the Million Man March. Black women supported black men, the roles of black women at the Million Man March. So check that out. That's by Anissa Muhammad, October 14th, 2020. All right. Let's see here. Let's do a quick update on what's going on with coronavirus. Still no national plan. U.S. surpasses 64,000 new coronavirus infections 2 days in a row for the first time since late July. For the first time since late July, the tally of newly reported coronavirus cases in the United States surpassed 64,000 on Thursday and Friday, Thursday, October 15th, Friday, October 16th, in 44 states and the District of Columbia. In 44 states and the District of Columbia, caseloads are higher than they were 1 month ago. And many of the new infections are being reported in rural areas with limited hospital capacity. Many of the new infections are being reported in rural areas with limited hospital capacity. That's a dangerous combination. More than 8 million cases have been reported nationwide since February, and at least 216,000 people in the U.S. have died of COVID-19, the disease caused by the virus. Now, we know that Pfizer Pharmaceutical Company, will not apply for emergency use authorization for a coronavirus vaccine until late November, backtracking on earlier assertions that the pharmaceutical company would have it ready this month. A person would need to sit next to an infectious passenger in a commercial flight for at least 54 hours to get infected, a Defense Department study found. Because I saw on MSNBC, they talked about how safe it is, actually, the way the way the ventilation is on planes. And they were talking about how actually safe it is to fly. Okay, I still don't want to fly, but I had to take some like real safety precautions to fly. I'm still cautious about flying, dealing with coronavirus. So I don't know if I would want to do that, but I understand. Now, health workers across the Midwest are issuing dire warnings that hospitals and healthcare facilities are bursting at the seams amid a surge in coronavirus cases. 8 hospitals in the Kansas City area, had to temporarily stop accepting ambulances on Wednesday. 8 hospitals in the Kansas City area in Missouri had to temporarily stop accepting ambulances Wednesday night. After Donald Trump announced he would send $200 each to older Americans to help pay for medicine, aides and Medicare officials scrambled to draft a plan. Wait a second. You didn't already have the plan before you announced it? After Trump announced he would send $200 each to older Americans to help pay for medicine, aides and Medicare officials scrambled to draft a plan. But the president's promise has raised questions over whether such discount cards are legal or even possible. So read the updates from Washington Post and New York Times also, okay? And we'll talk about this some more on our Sunday night show. Lastly, so this date in history, we have the Million Man March, as well, 25th anniversary of the Million Man March. And then also we have, this is the birth date of George Washington Williams as well. And we look at this date in African American history from Yenoba.com, YENOBA, Yenoba.com. George Washington Williams, credited as being the first African American historian of major significance, was born in Pennsylvania on this date in 1849. Also in 1859, on October 16th, 1859, the Harper's Ferry insurrection with John Brown attacking Harper's Ferry, Virginia, along with 13 whites and 5 African Americans on this date in 1859. They took arms and seized the arsenal. S.E. Thomas, who was an inventor, patented the waist trap, which was a curved metal pipe, on this date in 1886. Patent number 286 746. You can read more about this date in African American history at yenoba.com, YENOBA. So when we look at George Washington Williams, blackpast.org has a good article on George Washington Williams. He was a 19th century American historian, most famous for his volumes, History of the Negro Race in America from 1619 to 1880, as Negroes, as slaves, as soldiers, and as citizens. And then also a history of the Negro troops in the War of the Rebellion, which came out in 1887. Now, George Washington Williams was born in 1849 in Bedford Springs, Pennsylvania, and lived there until 1864. At the age of 14, and when at the age of 14 and lacking virtually any education, he left home to join the Union Army. So 1864, this is the year before the Civil War ends. Okay, this is the year before chattel slavery ends. So engaged by soldiers, engaged by the soldiers' lifestyle. And let me pull this up here. Let me try to pull this up. Okay, engaged by the soldiers' lifestyle, he followed this by fighting in Mexico in the overthrow of Maximilian. After his military career and out of a deep desire for education, George Washington Williams attended the Newton Theological Institution in Massachusetts. And okay, so by the time he was 25 years old, he had graduated, married, and become pastor of the 12th Baptist Church in Boston, Massachusetts. Now, during the next several years, he wrote as a columnist for the Cincinnati Commercial. He became a lawyer, founded a Boston newspaper called The Commoner in 1875, and became the first African-American member of his state legislature. So he became a politician also. Now, George Washington Williams spent only one term in political office, partly because he saw little chance of re-election, and partly because he increasingly desired to commit the majority of his time to working as a historian. To working as a historian. Yeah, in his historical works, Williams strove for objectivity and the truthful recording of history, but he also essentially wrote from a revisionist perspective. He researched avidly and wrote with the goal of re-recording American history to honestly and responsibly include the roles and experiences of African Americans. Okay, he researched avidly and wrote with the goal of re-recording American history to honestly and responsibly include the roles and experiences of African Americans. Okay, to correct the history. His first text, The History of the Negro Race, received a plethora of literary reviews, largely favorable critiques. Of the negative reviews he faced, most critiques noted that his writing style tended to be overblown and was tinted by his theological training. Okay. Now, in 1884, President Chester A. Arthur, a Republican, appointed George Washington Williams as U.S. ambassador to Haiti. Okay, U.S. ambassador to Haiti. Despite his confirmation by the United States Senate and a commission from the U.S. State Department, he was not allowed to assume his post because of opposition from the incoming Democratic president, Grover Cleveland, Stephen Grover Cleveland, who instead nominated John Edward Thompson. In 1890, George Washington Williams studied conditions in the Belgian Congo at the commission of President Benjamin Harrison, and on one occasion wrote a letter of complaint to the Belgian crown about the treatment of the indigenous Africans. Although he had hoped to spark a movement in protest of the Belgian government's role in its African colony, little came of his effort in the U.S. He then moved to England to work on a book which would focus on Africa. Unfortunately, Williams fell ill shortly after arriving in England and died at the young age of 41. He died in 1891. So we celebrate George Washington Williams, born October 16th, 1849. Check out the article from blackpast.org, P-A-S-T, blackpast.org, about George Washington Williams. And in the 2016 movie, The Legend of Tarzan, George Washington Williams was portrayed by actor Samuel L. Jackson. So there's an article from theguardian.com. Samuel L. Jackson, I was a drug addict, but I showed up on time and hit my marks. That's from June 30th, 2016. And they talk about George Washington Williams and portraying him in the movie also. He talks about how he documented the cruelties of the Belgian rubber harvesting industry there in the Congo, maimings, executions, atrocities without number, millions dead, and on his return pointed fingers at both King Leopold of Belgium and his local agent, the exploiter Henry Stanley, implicating them in what was not yet termed a genocide. It was an important milestone on the long road to ending the horrors of the rubber trade. Then also AtlantaBlackStar.com has an article from July 1st, 2016. Samuel L. Jackson plays 19th century black activist, but why do we have to learn about him in white savior Tarzan flick? Okay, so it talks about him portraying George Washington Williams as well. Let's see here. Okay, so check out these articles and check out the articles at blackpast.org, P-A-S-T. All right, guys. Hey, if you like this type of information, you could donate to the African History Network, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App. Then also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show, paypal.me/the AHN Show. So remember, we're here Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. to midnight Eastern Standard Time. And then on Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We broadcast on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation WFDF in Detroit. I'm a radio talk show host here in Detroit. Normally on Sunday nights, we're in the studio of the radio station, but because of COVID-19, they have us broadcasting from home. All right. So remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. Remember, right now it's corrects wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. And we'll talk to you next time. Peace.